Hey, welcome back to the Overflow Podcast. I'm Jeff DeBoard here with Austin Gibson, Pastor Justin Smith, and having been away from you for a couple of weeks, just want to welcome you back, and it's certainly good for us to be back here this morning. A lot of things have transpired over the last couple of weeks, especially the last week and a half, and it has just kind of left us in a place of, when basic necessities of life are taken away, and even in some cases, and our hearts just go out to the folks, Greene County, Irwin, Damascus, more areas around us, Washington counties, over into North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, all the way down into the state of Florida. I know that we have another hurricane. It's preparing to come on shore. Looks like it's going to go across the state of Florida. Our prayers certainly go out to those people, but it's just left us all taken aback. And but it's good to be back with you all here today. And going into the services yesterday, having worked through the cancellation of our regularly scheduled services the week before, we were able to meet back together yesterday. It just seemed like folks were so encouraged to be back in God's house yesterday. We had mentioned at North Campus yesterday that any time that God's people experience an interruption in the fellowship of being together in church, it just ought to leave you craving and starving to be back in God's house with God's people. And certainly it was good to be back with everyone yesterday. So, hey, it's good to be back with you guys today.
Yes,
good to see you.
I agree. Yeah, definitely encouraging yesterday for sure to be back in church. It's so empty whenever you miss a service and you're just like, God, what do we do and stuff. But we all jumped in while everything happened and started serving as a community together, and that way, so we still had that fellowship together, but while also doing what as God has called us to do, is be just like Jesus and be the hands and feet and just help others in your community and point them in the right direction and everything.
You bet. In an attempt yesterday to try to kind of officiate a testimonial service at North Campus, I was just sharing with the group before we turned it back over to our worship team. And I said, I was here, as part of a group that was helping to receive some donations from over in Lee County. How thankful we are for those folks and what they have been willing to do to help. And a bucket utility truck just pulled up behind me as I was sitting there, and I just happened to see him coming, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, are they up here to do some work, something like that? And so I got out and kind of walked around the back of my car, and this gentleman got out of the driver's side seat and walked over, and I said, hey, how you fellas doing? He said, hey, we're doing fine. And he reached out his hand and gave me a $20 bill, and he said, this is all of the cash that I've got, and just felt like it might help somebody. And, they're here to help us. Yeah. And I feel like we're hoping and trying our best to make them feel as appreciated as we can. I know a lot of folks have tried to, if nothing more, just stop and say thank you to these folks, because it has been like an ant colony in our county with people, trying to do what they can to restore power, phone service, things of that nature. But here's somebody who had come in, and I asked him, I said, where are you fellas from? And he said, we're from Ohio. So he said, and I still got my credit card. But he said, it's all the cash I've got. Yeah. And he said, I'm sure somebody down here can use that. Yeah. And I remember telling the folks at North yesterday, hey, the name of Jesus Christ was never mentioned, but he sure looked like him to me. Mm-hmm. And I just so appreciated that. It's kind of one of my takeaway stories from the past week, and there's been a number of them. So thankful for the folks that have been willing to be displaced as workers coming into the county to spend an extended time with us and do what they've been able to do to get us back up and going. And I know it's going to take a good while for some. And then we've got people up in Irwin, Damascus, and those areas, my goodness, who knows when they'll be able to get things back up and going again.
Yeah, even the amount of times that they told us thank you the other night when we were all out there handing out pizza to them and stuff. But, we're there to thank you,
Yeah,
for what you've done. But they were
absolutely.
just so grateful because they've never experienced such of a Southern hospitality, I guess you would put it, from anybody when they come into an area like what we have done that week as a community. They said they always had food every day. Justin was talking about that. And, they've just never experienced anything like that. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
they came from all over different places. I mean, that night we were serving, and some, it was like 300 to 350 here at a time. One of the guys that kind of runs it here, I guess, or is in charge, he said that on that Friday, I guess that's when we served it. And that's one thing with this; it's kind of put all the days together. And even yesterday, I went back and listened to the service a little bit. And there's just a overwhelming. It's like an overwhelming. You got all these things in your mind, what you do next, to help somebody, and you want to help somebody, our church is looking at doing that more. But then too, you got your own, things you're trying to take care of if you've had damage and stuff like that, so it's just a lot of things. I mean, it's really, not to play on words, but it's kind of like you're in the midst of a whirlwind. I mean, really, because it's just, everything's kind of coming at you and it's overwhelming at times. But it's something like, I don't know. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. It's we haven't really ever experienced a storm like this, a hurricane in the mountains. I mean, that don't happen, but it did. And, some of the devastation is terrible. One of the guys that's a state trooper that works in, those counties in Irwin and Unicoi said it's just unreal. I mean, you can't even it's something that you see on a movie, a war zone. I mean, like going overseas and stuff. And, we've been on mission trips and things like that to Honduras where you kind of go into these people that are way out and, live in, huts and mud floors and don't have running water and things like that. Well, we all got to experience a little bit of that this week. And, I said it makes us uncomfortable because it's inconvenient. But, it makes you also appreciate the things that matter most. But no, the generosity of people, compassion, working together. It didn't matter what church you went to or if you were a Christian or not. I mean, people were just helping people. And that's what I saw that I thought was just, speaks well of, our community, to show those guys that were coming here. Many of us were, without power for, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days, I think. Some are maybe still out with power and some, out regions way out, but, without water. But us to step up and I mean, they said they'd never seen anything like it, and that's what, that's kind of what we talked about yesterday is using these opportunities, of how, God brings people into your path. And then you use those opportunities to serve them, be the light in the darkness, to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and then use that opportunity to connect with them so you can connect, them to Christ. And I mean, it was just, it's overwhelming to think about still for me. I mean, I don't even know the words to say. In our service yesterday, people had testimonies and stuff. We had some time, but like you said, I mean, we actually, if you think about it, we missed, usually we have that Wednesday night where we connect. That's why we do it to kind of refuel but we didn't do it for 2 Wednesday nights because of the flooding from the first Wednesday night. And then we didn't have power the second Wednesday night, and we didn't have church that week either. So it was, we kind of got unplugged and kind of out of the routine. And, but yesterday, we had a good crowd. It seemed like good spirit. I think it was a little quiet because I think people were just tired, cause you're exhausted. I mean, you're not sleeping like you normally sleep. Your routine's kind of out. The kids were out of school, going back today, this morning on a 2-hour delay. Our football teams, my boys we played Monday night and then played Saturday. just everything's just kind of pushed and moved around, and it gets people out of the routine, and that, and then you're out there working in it, and if you have cleanup at your house, like a lot of people do, you're out there trying to clean it up, but you look at it like at my house, and it's like, okay, have you even started? So you have these things, and it's just good for us to keep perspective of, okay, let's think about the good here. It could be a whole lot worse. There's a whole lot of more people that have some of my friends in Augusta, South Carolina, and over in North Carolina. It's way worse than what I have at my house, So trying to keep it in perspective and knowing that the Lord watched over us, and putting the things that matter most, is, we got to spend time together. For a while, we didn't have social media. For a while, we didn't have internet. For a while, we didn't have TV. I had to use, I was trying, on that Friday night, I didn't know when we was sitting there in the dark, with candles, and I got me a weather radio that hadn't been really charged. And, it's that crank one, and you crank it 3 or 4 times and it lasts about 30 seconds. But
what is he talking about?
Well, I know you wouldn't know, but but it's, one of these weather radios, what I'm talking about. If you charge it long enough, it goes great. But if you don't have power, you have to crank it, about 50 times gets you about 3 minutes.
You've seen those older movies that have to do maybe with a World War II era or even Vietnam, where they're out in an area like that and they're trying to establish a communication. And they've got those boxes, and you'll see them wind up, and that's the way that it generates enough power to get a signal so you can access, a phone signal like that. NOAA weather radio has an ongoing meteorology forecast. You can access that. And for people who don't have power, you can still stay connected to the upcoming situation with the weather like that. So
you just had one of those laying around at your house?
Yeah, we've had one before.
That's wild.
Yeah. Michelle's all about stuff like that. We had, and because of her, we had gallons of water that she's kind of stored up. She'll buy it here and there, just so. It was smart because where are you gonna get water to flush the toilet? You don't have water, so some people that had water, because they're on city water. Well, I have city water, but where I live up on a hill, I have to have a pump that pumps it to me. Well, with no power, no pump.
Yeah.
And so, and two, I think there's a great illustration, about in the Christian life is, sometimes we're just living our Christian life, and then all of a sudden we lose the power to live the Christian life, and we don't even know it's gone. We don't know what to do. And it's kind of like what happened, this past week. It kind of, all of a sudden you have it, all of a sudden you don't. And then it's like, okay, now what do? You go into this survival mode, and it gets difficult. It gets uncomfortable.
Yeah, the Samson phenomenon.
Yeah. And it's, this was a great illustration, but I just think it keeps us, focused on what matters most, that my kids were okay. My boys were in their house when I had 5 trees hit my house and didn't do much damage. People a lot worse, but it could have been bad, but they were there. And Braden actually watched the first tree, and he was as calm as a cucumber. He just went there and tapped his brother's shoulder and said, "Hey, we got a tree on the house." I said, "What?" and then he FaceTimes me, and that's when it was picking up, because me and Michelle and Brooklyn went to work that morning early. We had a few limbs in the driveway, but nothing like a tree, And because it was just supposed to be winds, and I'm like, okay, well, I've had winds before. I hadn't had them like that, But the cleanup and stuff, I look at my backyard, and it's totally gone. It's just a forest now. You just got to look at it and say, okay, how am I going to get all this out? I got some guys coming, and we've looked at starting some other things too, and it makes you kind of evaluate, okay, what can we as a church do better? If this happens again. I think we did a good job for what we had, but, people with generators and things like that to give power. Just some things I'm thinking about for our church, like, because we've got 2 great places, there in Weber City and here in Gate City, to where, we could be to help people that, they don't have power, that don't have a way to take a shower. And what was awesome is people was reaching out. I had a family. They live up in Manville. Great family. Braden went up there to hang out with them because they had internet and power and they could play Xbox, so they didn't want to listen to the weather radio, and we played cards some, but as it gets old after a while, but they, they just took us in like we were their own family, they just come up and, it was, Saturday after all this happened when everybody was really without power, and, it came up, to hang out. My wife went up to take a shower, and, we didn't take showers for a while, but they just opened their home, and that's what I saw is, people were just opening their homes, trying to help as many people as they could. Cause some people would go to like Bristol, and try to find a hotel, but you couldn't find a hotel.
Yeah.
No.
These workers that came, the power people, some of them, if they didn't live here, they were driving to Salem, Virginia. They were driving to,
Pikeville,
Knoxville,
Kentucky,
Pikeville, all
Knoxville.
these, that's hour and a half to 2 hours away. And that's insane to me. It's just like, wow.
Well, a weather event like that just throws a shock into the environment, to the system, everything. It's a total, it's a trauma in a lot of ways like that. We were listening to Joey the other night was kind of, as being kind of an overseer and a coordinator for 700 men, I think. The logistical process that goes into moving workers from one area to another. He talked about flying workers from Florida to Connecticut, and in Connecticut they get in their trucks and then they drive all the way back down the eastern seaboard to South Carolina, North Carolina, and that's happening all over this part of the country or wherever a natural disaster is occurring like that. But I think for the last several days, what we've been able to appreciate is this human video that God has provided for us in how he connects people to problems in order that we can be extensions of his help and his grace and his provision. We have seen people that have, they're offering money, they're offering material possessions, they're offering to go out and buy whatever is needed, they're offering to help provide transportation. My youngest son was using a physician's building that had a backup generator just to bathe his baby twins. And one of the partners in the practice came in and said, my husband's got a generator here in the back of his car. And, by the way, he's an electrical contractor, So by the end of that day, my son and daughter-in-law and their two little twins had some lights, a generator wired in. He's out trying to find gas so they'll have enough to get it in well into the next day. Runs into a fella trying to find a gas can who says, by the way, they don't have them here, but I've got a can at home. So, he gets gas from a patient's family. And then what happens the next day? The patient's family comes to Evan's house so they can bathe because they don't have lights. And all of this, just continues to play out. And that's just one out of hundreds of testimonies of people and how God connects us together to do exactly what we've been seeing people do. We can only hope that those people that have been visiting us for whatever time they've been here, if they're going back to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, if they're going back to West Texas, or if they're going to upstate New York, Pennsylvania, wherever the Lord has sent them from here, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana. I can't even remember or count the number of states. It's just mind-boggling. We hope more than anything that there's going to take some Jesus back with them. Mm-hmm. If it's offering a pizza, a bag or two of chips, a drink, and a dessert, homemade dessert. My goodness, thank you, folks, for the ones that provided the means to be able to make that possible. The things that have been donated that we are going to be delivering tomorrow up to the Irwin community. We just hope that God has been glorified and the name of Jesus has been lifted up in some way, shape, or form like that, because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's all that's going to matter. Mm-hmm. We're getting ready to start a message series in the book of Ecclesiastes. We'll not jump too far ahead of that today, but, Solomon is going to speak out of frustration to some of the very things that people are learning as a result of tragedy.
Yeah.
But this connecting of people, it's just amazing to see how God does that, because, we have been helped. Our Father in heaven from eternity past formed a redemptive plan to help us provide a way out of the most serious issue that mankind will ever face, and that's sin. And if we've experienced the grace of God personally in any way, shape, or form, we're compelled to extend that to other people in some way, in whatever measure, whatever means that might be available to us. We just want to be Jesus to other people. You make a great point, and I can kind of sense that in this room today. This has kind of whittled us down. People came yesterday to church. I was only, there for a few minutes before the 9 o'clock service started, and I was there for the entirety of the 11:15 service. You see people that were coming in yesterday with smiles on their faces because it was good to be back in fellowship again. But you also saw folks that appeared to, their shoulders were hanging maybe just a little bit lower, because physically, when you've endured and you've worked through and you've been displaced. Some people have had to move locations. My wife and I were one of those. We were blessed to be able to have a place that we could go. Anita's parents were wonderful, but not everybody had that. But there was a sense of relief, but there was a sense of fatigue yesterday. It was good to see folks back in God's house, but you could kind of sense, we were a tired group yesterday, and rightfully so.
Yeah, because you're out. And it's one of the Bible and talks about Jesus being a servant. And that's what we're to do. We're to serve other people. And really, that's what the whole Christian life, I said it yesterday, the Christian life is never about us. It's about Jesus and it's about other people. And really, the Christian life when Jesus was here that he modeled for us, it wasn't ever about him. It was about his Father, and it was about other people. He said, I always do those things that please him. And he said, I took on the form of a servant. I didn't come to be served. I came to serve and give my life a ransom. And so I think there's something within us as Christians and believers when we are on mission. That's what we talked about through the whole book of Acts. We're continuing on the ministry of Jesus, taking the gospel to all the world, that there's something satisfying about that. It's like, yeah, you're tired, but it's like, that verse that says the outer man is perishing, but the inward man is renewed every day. And so, yeah, my outward body over the past week and a half has been exhausted, because we've been working, your mind mentally, emotionally.
Your mind's always working, isn't it?
Yes.
Always.
And
when your body's
everybody's
not.
is, but even that much more as a church pastor, because, you're thinking about your congregation. You're thinking about, what are we doing as a church? Are we, trying to get all this organized and help? But then you got your own stuff too, that you're trying to, trees you're trying to get off your porch and get out of your yard. And, we had tons of people come. I got people coming this week, that are just wanting to help. And it's a blessing to see that. But there's that, the outward man is tired, exhausted, drained, but the inward man just seems like it gains more strength because it's doing what we're called to do. And that's what I think about our church. We saw people step up and just did it with joy, bringing stuff, donating money, going to an hour away to get water so we can get it to other people, bringing stuff. Again, multitudes of people. One of the places here in Gate City, Estill Heights was probably one of the worst places here that had so many trees down and stuff, but people just, going over and cutting wood and trying to help people get to their homes, and get it off their houses and get off their property. And again, cleanup is, be months, to get it back, to what it was, with all these trees down and stuff. And some people just don't really understand it. We had several come. I had a couple come on the Sunday we canceled because of just no power anywhere, no service, no water. But they came from, across the state line. And when they got to the house, they couldn't believe it. I mean, because, just, 5 miles across the state line, it wasn't really that bad.
No.
It was nothing. And most of us that lived here in Gate City, we were having to go over to make calls, and we were having to go over to charge our phones because, we didn't have – it was kind of crazy that you go across the state line right past the red lights there in Weber City, and then you had a little bit of juice, but you didn't have none while you were here. And it was just complete shutdown, lockdown, and, you're kind of here. And it was like a ghost town. It's like at night,
there's
nothing. It was pitch black dark and nobody on the roads. And, you're trying to, come from one place, trying to, try to make a call. And that's what I do. I'd go out to, across the state line a little bit so I could make a signal and text people, and because I had nothing in my house.
We saw him the other day at 7:30 in the morning trying to figure out what he was doing down there. He was trying to make a call. He said me and Amber was going to do laundry and stuff, so we went to Kingston to do laundry.
Yeah, so it was just threw us all out of whack, and but I thought our people responded well, and not just our people. The church, it seems like the church always steps up.
Yeah. I think one thing is that Friday, in our scenario, like when the storm was picking up and everything, our power had went out, and I was just waiting on my buddy to come to my house because we were actually going to Charlotte. And so in the middle of the storm, I saw a tree fall over down below us and everything. They were out there trying to cut it, get it out of the road. Then the power went out. And I didn't realize how bad it was going to get. I still went to Charlotte. We drove, but we didn't realize how bad it had gotten back at the house because we had gotten to Charlotte and I saw the flooding that was happening over in Unicoi and stuff. And one of my friends on Facebook was actually at the hospital that they had to evacuate on the roof. One of the friends I went to school with over here at Gate City, she actually works down in the medical field, and she had posted on Facebook of her safety and everything, and that was her first helicopter ride. And I didn't realize how impactful, that flood coming in was until after we had gotten over to Charlotte. But when I got back, it was just overwhelming to see that how, like you were talking about, the power still being out, multiple days and everything. And me being on social media, I watched so many videos just scrolling through like TikTok and Instagram Reels and everything, and just seeing the impact of the area really put a burden on me and made me feel absolutely awful, and how grateful I am for, for our lives and everything, but everything that we had at our house. And so when I got home, I was just so overwhelmed, and I told Amber, I was like, man, we gotta go through our stuff. We gotta get rid of it. And I just felt so bad for all the stuff that I like accumulated over the years, like clothing, food and stuff that just sits there. And it just really, really tore me apart. And I just got antsy and just got up, and we just went through it all. And I wasn't even like second guessing most of that stuff. I was just, somebody else needs it more than me. And it just really tore me apart when we got up here to the church and we were doing donations. I just wanted to help in some capacity, that I could. But I got to the points where I just wanted to sit there and just cry. And I just didn't know what else to do. And I just felt so bad for everybody in our area. But I just knew in those situations, and we talked about it a little bit in our life group yesterday, is what do you do if you don't have Jesus and something like this happens? What do you do? Like, who do you look to? What do you look to for hope after something like this happens? And I just really been a burden, like I said, all week long. Just, man, aren't we so grateful for like the community and Jesus, and we have a hope at the end of the day in those situations.
Justin's first bullet point in his message yesterday was out of the title of the message, connecting people to Christ. And that first point really is key, because without that, the other 2 points, you can't really, the other two can't apply if you don't get the first one right. And that basically is see people. And, how do we see people? Well, it's not if in the Christian perspective, and that's one of the things that comes out of tragic circumstances is it does change how we view things. It changes how we view people. It certainly changes how we view difficult circumstances like that. But the Holy Spirit inside of us is present in the moment, and He is the one that raises our level of attention. He heightens our awareness to the situation around us, just like what you said, Austin, about, hey, I just got to thinking about what I had at home, what I don't need, and what other people do need. Really, at the core of that, that's a spiritual thought. And we don't have the ability in and of ourselves, human beings, to think like that. Only the Holy Spirit can do that for us. So He enables us to see people. And when we see them, we see those whom God loved enough to provide Jesus to die on the cross for. But also He enables us to assess things in the moment as to how we can get involved with their life, even if it's a word of encouragement or just an opportunity to walk with them for a time. Without Him, without Holy Spirit, we would not be able to do what Justin just was talking about, that giving ourselves away in order that we can experience this fulfillment and purpose-filled life that Jesus Himself said, listen, I've come to give you, life more abundantly. This is exactly what we've been able to experience in the opportunities that God has provided us, generally speaking, to help meet the needs of other people like that. It is truly invigorating to give and not require one thing in return. It is invigorating to live that kind of life.
Yeah.
Folks apart from Christ can't understand that like we can.
Yeah, and just the little small, just that feeling of being on mission, it just, I don't know what it does, but it just absolutely lights a fire inside of me of something that I just miss every time. Because I talked about it with one of my students is, anytime I do anything to give back or give, something that I just have the power and ability to do, it just lights me up to want to do it more.
Absolutely.
And I have been trying to find ways now, just doing research, just where can we get involved, where can we go serve, where can we take a group or anything like that. I'm just ready. I'm always ready to go. As soon as I do anything that does anything with helping others, I'm ready. I'm always wanting to be on mission somehow, some way.
Sometimes just as a way of wrapping up a conversation, or I'll say this, or beginning a conversation, we'll just come up to each other, look at it and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" That's just casual, and sometimes we'll end that time by saying something like this: "Hey, if you need anything, let us know." Nobody really expects anyone to come back and say, "Well, as a matter of fact," but we are living in a day and time right now, especially locally and regionally, where we'd better be asking that question and we'd better be willing to back it up, because there are many things that we can be doing.
Yeah, I think, one of the things you said about it's because you're, the mission part, when you do that, you want to do it more. I think it's because you're living, for a purpose higher than yourself. And, when you help people, it's what God put in us. It's our desire. And it's what, they give us acrostic for joy: Jesus, others, you. Because you're not focused on yourself.
Right.
And there's something when you help somebody and you've helped them, not only does it bless the one you're giving to, but it blesses the one's given.
Mm.
That's why Jesus says more blessed to give than receive, because you're going to receive something back from that. And, that's what we've tried to do. And so as we think about, the days ahead, of course, for our church, we're starting Wednesday nights back. We're trying to get back on a regular schedule since we've been out 2 weeks, but it resumes this week. And then for those of you listening out there, we are still going to be taking donations on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5 to 7 at our North Campus, which is located in Gate City, past the vocational school, the top part of the building. There's a sign that when you come into the property, go take a left, and it takes you up to the where we're taking the donations. But right now, they're wanting personal hygiene items, formula, and unused bottles. That's a major need right now, and then clothing and bedding. And so, if you can help with that, but some say, hey, I don't have anything like that, because they're wanting it. If it's, of course, the unused bottles, and formula, of course, and all that. But if you're wanting to bring clothing that is used, it just needs to be clean. Bedding, it can be used, but it just needs to be clean. But you say, well, I would rather just give money. Well, that's fine. You can also make a donation out to our church, write a check, give money, and we will send a check to the Tennessee Baptist Mission Board, who we are aligned with, and they can get it to the local chapters where it best needs to go. And also, if you're local, a lot of people think I say this as a joke, but firewood. I mean, if there's people that that use firewood, I have some guys coming tomorrow that's going to cut, and we're going to haul it. They're going to haul it to their places, but we've had a couple of people reach out and say, hey, we'd like to get some. We'll haul it to you. But you can just reach out to me at Facebook, or you can reach out to me on social media or the church website. You can go and email me. That's fine too. Or call the church office. But, we're just wanting to continue. And it's going to be a long process. This whole thing is, I don't know how long we'll take donations for, and probably until they tell us to stop. But it's a lot of devastation. And so we want you to be able to help. And we'll post some things out there where you can help and where you need to go. But that's just some things to keep you abreast of what's going on. But we thank you for tuning in today. This is on a Monday, and so we're back after 2 weeks. But we just want to keep praying for those people that have been, lost everything on the road to recovery now. Praying for those that are ministering to them in all these different places, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, some in Virginia, and then also the ones in Florida that's getting ready to hit. And so we want to lift them up in prayer. But we thank you for tuning in today to this edition of the Overflow Podcast. Hope you have a good rest of your Monday. Check us out, like, share. God bless you. Have a good rest of your week.